Hello, hello, my friends. AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink. Welcome back to my face and my card making space and some more holiday cards. Doing a mix of oldie but goodie favorites and newer things. One of the new things I've already used in multiple videos. Kind of fixated on it. But yeah, die cutting watercolor paper. Easy watercoloring using some reinkers. 3D embossing. Bunch of splatter, all the fun things. As always, everything I used will be listed and linked in the description box below the video. My links are affiliate links, just means if you use one of my links and end up placing an order, I get a little kickback from that at no extra cost to you. That is what helps keep the lights on, pays the bills, enables me to keep bringing out content. And then at the end of the video, in the end screen, I will link to my holiday 2025 playlist, which I will continue adding to. I generally will keep making holiday cards right up to Christmas and beyond. We'll see. So that's it for my chatter and intro. Let's get into making the cards. So I'm using the tall Poinsettia wafer die. This came out last year, I think. I've used it before, and I'm using just the die of like the petals basically, and I die cut a bunch. It was another one of those things where I was just started, zoning out and having fun. Repetitive die cutting. And I die cut other stuff. We'll get to that. So I die cut them from just El Cheapo watercolor paper. Love this stuff. It's great for stuff like this. It's lightweight. I can do, multiple layers of it and it doesn't add a bunch of bulk. That's why I love it. Like for literally things like this. And if I want to do just a whole bunch of layers, it's not going to make my card like super thick or heavy or anything like that. So for the watercoloring, I'm using reinkers. You could use anything. Reinkers, liquid watercolors, regular watercolors, whatever you want to do. I decided to use reinkers because I got a bunch of them, especially of the like Simon Pawsitively saturated ones, because there's 100 and however many colors now. Love it. So I'm using Cranberry and Cabernet. I've sped this up. I'm going to super speed this up in editing. Anyone can do this. This is simple. This is, again, when I say I just slap some color on it, that is what I am doing. I didn't even bother to stick these. Usually when I have die cuts like this, I stick them to, one of my like low-tack sticky mats, etc. I didn't even bother with that because I had so many. I was like, I would need to pull out like all the mats I have. I have enough. But especially, and I've talked about this, red. Red likes to get in everything. It likes to get on everything. It likes to stain everything. No. So I just worked on my glasswork surface and I would just wet the die cut and then slap on the color. And then I've got a little hardboard there off the side and I would just move each piece onto there and then let them dry. And then repeat. And I have an absolute crime scene going on my desk, but it's glass. So when I'm done, I clean it all up because even cleaning up, especially working with like reinkers, just red, it is what it is. And yeah, I went with the reinkers versus like you could just smush your ink pads if they're water reactive. That works too. I just went with the reinkers because I was doing so many. When I realized how many die cuts I had sitting, I was like, yeah, a few drops of reinker, much faster than just having to repeatedly smush the ink pads, pick up the color, paint, yada yada. And yeah, you could wear gloves if you're doing something like this and it really bothers you. I don't care. After I'm done, I just scrub my hands real good with the little scrubby soap and stuff, and it's pretty much gone. Reds though do want to get everywhere. So if you're doing literally something like this with like reds, any reinkers, but reds especially, and you don't want to deal with any staining, wear some gloves. Or you can use, like the tweezers or like one of our pokey tools, something just to hold it in place so that you're not getting red reinker all over yourself. I don't mind. This is fun. To me, this is fun. There's no real rhyme or reason other than I used Cranberry and Cabernet were my colors. Just a bright red and then a brownish red. Kept the brighter red towards the tips and the darker one, towards the centers. And that's it. Like, That's it. And set them aside to dry. So I cleaned everything up real well. Scrub my hands, cleaned everything up. And then I'm doing the exact same thing for the leaves. And the leaves are another oldie but goodie favorite. This is the Abundant Leaves wafer die that I love. I have used this die set so many times. So I only die cut this one cluster because it has multiples in the die. So I die cut just this one while I was die cutting all those poinsettias. And I'm doing the exact same thing, just with greens. So I've got field and pine. And yep, just mucking. Just slapping on the water, slapping on the color, setting it onto a little hardboard, letting it dry. So this for me is like kind of therapeutic. You don't really have to think too much. It's like just get the color on and then, go on to the next one, go on to the next one. And yeah, if you're at all curious, want to start doing more watercolor type stuff, like the look of it, try something like this. Like this watercolor paper is dirt cheap. It works great with, reinkers, little watercolors, things like that. And we've all got how many wafer dies? Little floral bits, greenery bits, things like that. So I set all those things aside to dry. And then for my backgrounds, I embossed Simon's black cardstock with the beautiful Poinsettia frame embossing folder. I've used this multiple times. I've used it in I use it in the same way every time so far. I do one little addition with this. So I embossed the black cardstock and I'm using white pigment ink and lightly just blending this. I'm trying to show this now. I've got a side cam. I've been talking to Kathy Zielski. We'll blame her. Anyway, I very light-handed and just, rub the ink pad around, picking up the high points, which shows up beautifully on black cardstock, but it works on anything. And then I took some gold pigment ink. This is the Lisa Horton gold that I've had sitting. I've used it in other videos, and then it was impossible to get for the longest time. Anyway, I just used a little mini dome blending foam with the gold and just lightly rub that on kind of the centers, and it just gives that little extra something. And then I set those aside. I also die cut just white cardstock with one of the petal flipped or petal tipped labels wafer dies that I don't bother putting that die set away. Love it. Love the shape. I've used this one as a million times. And I'm stamping the white Christmas text, yes, with Shark Positively Saturated ink. Not stamping it perfectly. A lot of this is going to get covered up. It doesn't matter. And then I backed these with Big Mama foam tape, which while I was filming this, I used up the roll that in one of my live streams, we marked it back in, I think it was March. We marked the date on it to see how long it takes me to go through a roll. And when I was filming this, I used up the roll. So I pulled out a brand new roll of Big Mama foam tape. And to commemorate, added sound effects and whatever, you guys. I'm nuts. It is what it is. But big, huge, shiny new roll of foam tape. And yeah, I keep backups of this stuff. So I put it on there and then put these onto the background. So it gives just a little bit of dimension. These cards in the end are going to look very impactful. They look like they have a lot of depth and dimension to them, but they still are light enough weight and will fit in an envelope, and they're not so thick and bulky that I'm going to have to add extra postage. Side note, when I mail all my cards, but especially cards like this, I take just a panel of cheap cardstock that I've cut to A2 size and I place it on the top of the card before I stick it in the envelope. That just protects it, evens everything out, especially with embellishments, things like that, and makes it a little more smooth so that it can go through the mail easier. That's all I do. So I adhered my poinsettias and I layered them up. For the bottom corner one, I did 2 large ones and a small one, and the top one was a large one and 2 small ones, and just kind of rotated them a bit. And then for the greenery, I just snipped some of the pieces apart, gluing everything with just liquid glue, And I'm only adding glue, like with the greenery, I only added glue to basically like the stems. And then with the florals, I only added glue to the centers. So all those petals and leaves pop up on their own because they were thinner watercolor paper, all the liquid, etc. So they just naturally like curl up, and that just works. So, splatter. This first little bit might freak some people out. I did red splatter, which again, got to be careful with that. It can look like a crime scene. But I just put a little, just like a drop of that cranberry reinker, added a little water, and added a bit of splatter. More so for the texture it's going to add to the flowers and the leaves, and a bit to that die cut like background. Obviously the black cardstock, that red won't show up at all, which is fine. It was just a little extra. And then I'm using Simon's Positively Perfect White Splatter Medium, which is very liquidy. It needs to be stirred up really well every time you use it because the white pigment settles to the bottom. This, when splattered over something, especially like these poinsettia die cuts, because those had like bright red water active ink, that splatter will not stay white. It will start absorbing that color as it dries. That's fine. I, again, just want like the texture of the splatter on those, and then it'll say white on the black background, which is perfect. So heavy amount of splatter with this, because on the leaves and the florals, it'll sort of absorb a bit of the color and be a lot less obvious. And then on the background, we'll have the white splatter. So then, but wait, there's more. I'm also using the Positively Perfect Gold splatter. This was released with the December 2025 card kit. I got the card kit late because of the postal strikes. Filmed an unboxing, dedicated like an entire day's worth of work to it, and then found out the entire thing is sold out. So that was fun. Individual elements are available on their own, including the splatter, etc. So not the end of the world. It just, I am now racing to catch up with other things. So I pulled out this to play with it. This definitely needs to be stirred up. Again, the gold pigment will settle to the bottom of the container. It is liquidy just like the white. This is more subtle. I kind of expected it to be, especially when I opened it. It's very, very dark, and it has almost a matte finish to it. So that if you want like bright gold, like brassy gold type splatter, this is not the product for that. This is much more subtle, and yeah, I'm gonna have to play with it some more. I kind of like how it looked on these, but usually when I reach for gold, I'm going for like bright gold. But it's also just pretty. I also need to mix mine up even more. I don't think I mixed mine fully, but it was fun. So I set all those aside to dry. While everything was drying, I die cut. Well, I'd actually die cut this when I was die cutting all the other die cuts. Because really, maximize the space and time. I used the Joy and Cheer wafer die. This one's new. And Fancy Joy and Cheer. It's sold out like more than once since they released it. And yeah, I die cut it from white cardstock, from Simon's Gold Glitter cardstock, and the outline from vellum. And then I stacked the layers together. So I stacked one layer of the white with the gold, adhered that to the vellum. And then I take that final layer of the white cardstock that I die cut, and I'm adhering it to the back under the vellum. This pops the vellum up a smidge, so it makes the vellum float a little bit more. This also makes it easier to adhere to whatever you want to glue the sentiment to. So I don't have to trace behind the sentiment on that vellum, because if you have worked with vellum, glue shows through vellum. And it don't matter what nobody says. I know, it doesn't matter what any product claims. Glue shows through vellum. Like, just is what it is. That's the nature of vellum. It's transparent. So adding the cardstock die cut just makes it easier to adhere. I used to always like trace behind and try to hide the glue, and it oozes out, and then you see it and it's not pretty. So adding that extra cardstock die cut makes it just easier. So after I had adhered my sentiments, I stuck them to the card fronts, and then my card bases are just top folding A2 white note cards, 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. And I'm stamping the Happy Holidays sentiment from the CZ Design Holiday Typewriter set. So I'm stamping that sentiment with just Nocturne ink. And then I had extra die cuts that I adhered that I will show at the end to finish off the insides. And then as my final like finishing touch, I have these little gold sparkle like rhinestones. They're clear rhinestones with gold glitter like embedded into them. I haven't used these in a long time. I used to use these all the time. All the time. Love them. So I pulled those out because I was like, those go so perfectly with the like gold glitter cardstock, you know, all the things. So I put glue in the center of the poinsettias and then like clustered some of those embellishments for flower centers and then added a few more. And this glue dries clear, not sticky, just matte, clear finish. So it'll just be like the sparkly little flower centers when all is said and done. So I just had to let the glue dry and these cards are complete. So we've got texture and all this dimension, but it still stays nice and like flat basically once it's, like I said, put a piece of cardstock over it, stick it in an envelope, good to go. And yeah, depth, texture, dimension, very sort of traditional colors, but that pop of black just makes everything else pop, which I love. So, like I said, links to everything are in the description box below. Thank you all so very much for hanging out with me, for thumbs upping and commenting. I appreciate it a ton. And I will see you all very soon in the next video. Bye. Thank you so much to my amazing Patreon supporters. For anyone that might be interested in joining my Patreon community and supporting me, the link to my Patreon is in the description box below the video. For everyone else, as always, thank you all so much for taking the time to watch my videos, for thumbs upping, commenting, subscribe if you haven't, I'd love to have you. And here's a couple other videos for you to check out in case you missed them. Bye!